Horowitz, and welcome to our parenting forum. You can visit our parenting forum at www.thebrightbeginnings.com. Someone posed a question yesterday on the forum asking if abuse rates are the same everywhere, and is it possible to evaluate what the risk level in any particular community is? I think they're extremely important questions. And I guess from time to time, in responding to these questions on parenting forums, I'm going to make videos like this in order to be able to treat complex subjects in a comprehensive way so that you parents can have information. And to me, that's the purpose of our parenting forum. Again, it's thebrightbeginnings.com. I really encourage you. It's very simple sign up. You just need a username and a password, and then you can post your own questions and comment on other people's questions or responses. My vision for this is that it should be a real intensive dialogue, a productive dialogue about the real parenting issues of the day. So let's talk about it. Are abuse rates the same everywhere? Now, we know that there is a lot of data on general abuse rates, and you can look it up online. There's a lot of great research that really gives you a handle on what the abuse rates are in the general population, and you know what we talk about abuse. What type of abuse is it? You can do that research on your own. But the question was posed about our Jewish communities, but this is really relevant to parents anywhere, and I really encourage you to have information and use it. And one of the best things I believe I can do is to empower you to be able to know what we know and make these decisions on your own. Now, there's no question in my mind that abuse rates are not the same everywhere, and that decisions that community leaders make directly impact the abuse rates in their community. And I'm going to give you some risk factors and empower you to do this evaluation on your own to kind of figure out what is the likelihood of a child getting abused in your community. Now, let me give you one simple example. In Passaic, New Jersey, a very good friend of mine, Rabbi Yakov, is the rabbi of a synagogue, of a shul, and Stephen Colmer, a registered sex offender, moved into that community within the past year. Rabbi Glasser made a parenting class. He actually invited me to come speak to the parents in his synagogue. Jewish Family Services did a talk with the parents thereafter. He made a public announcement and sent emails out that this registered sex offender is not welcome in his shul. The fellow came in Friday night in middle of davening. Rabbi Glasser interrupted his own Kriya Shema. He interrupted his own prayers, walked over to the guy and said, "I'm sorry, you're not welcome here." Now, think like an abuser, okay? You know, they say to catch a thief, you got to think like a thief. Would you want to go into a community like that? Would you move into a community like that? Or would you rather go to a community where abusers get letters of support from influential people in the community? Or in one extreme case, a fundraiser was made for an abuser to raise money for his defense. Now, I'm not saying people aren't entitled to defense, but that sends a message. So abusers, it's important to understand the way they work. They select and they groom children, meaning an abuser typically walks into a setting where there are many children, and they do a very brilliant and evil calculation. Which are the kids here that I can abuse and get away with it? If you want to read up on it, there's a fantastic article by Malcolm Gladwell called In Plain View. It was in the New Yorker magazine. It is an absolutely fantastic article that explains how the grooming process works. So they select, meaning that they try to figure out by a lot of different ways whose parents are involved, if the children were spoken to, are the children educated about child safety, and based on that, that information, they make a decision whether or not they want to, pursue, God forbid, to start up with a child. So I'd like to propose that abusers select communities and abusers select the culture of that community, and the abusers groom the communities. So first they check to see if it's safe there. Will people notice? Will I be reported to the police? Are the people educated here? It's really logical. And once you understand this, I encourage you to take that information and evaluate your own community. So I'm not going to name communities. I'm not going to say, give types of communities and, which, whether it's Hasidic or Modern Orthodox or Yeshivish. I'm not going there. I'm giving you information, and I'd like you to take that and look at it yourself. So I came up with this idea. I'd like to share it with you, and I welcome your feedback. Feel free to agree, disagree, or anything in between. Again, go over to the forum at thebrightbeginnings.com and feel free to comment. I certainly will. I'm setting aside time to respond to questions there. But here's what I'd like you to think about. Let's try to take all the emotion out of the discussion. This is a very emotional, incendiary topic that people are very passionate about, and as they should be. So let's try to take the emotion out and think about it logically. So here's an idea. Imagine if Geico or John Hancock would offer an insurance policy to parents. And what parents would do is they would pay a premium, and God forbid, if one of the children was abused, they would get free treatment for life for that child. Counseling, God forbid, drug rehab, whatever that child needed for the rest of their life to take care of that situation of their being abused, they would get free treatment. Again, this is obviously just an example, but I want to illustrate the point and make it a way that's relevant to you. So just like you go to Geico and you want to take a policy on your house, or let's say your car, they ask you a list of questions. They have risk assessment. They have actuaries that do this, and they say, okay, is your car garaged or not? Do you live in a safe neighborhood? Do you have violations? Have you been speeding? Did you get into a number of crashes? And according to that, they set your premium. So imagine that you were going into somebody who knew nothing about your community. He was religious, wasn't religious, he's Christian, he's Jewish, he or she, makes no difference. You're going to a person who knows nothing about the community, and they're asking you a list of questions. How would they assess your risk? Here are a couple of questions that I would ask. There are others, but let's try to keep it simple, okay? Are there child safety classes for kids? Meaning, is there child safety education programs for children? Is there child safety education for parents, meaning preventative education? Is there child safety education for school and for summer camps? Are children comfortable talking about their bodies? Is the culture in the community such that a child would be comfortable telling a parent, a teacher, someone in the community that someone started up with them? Are there protocols in summer camps, in schools, in shuls and synagogues? And what we say by protocols, meaning, are there lists of rules and regulations? Whether a staff member can take a student out for a Slurpee, or what the rules for physical contact between staff and children are. How about rules for seclusion? Can someone give private lessons in a home, in a setting? So schools and communities, some of them do have protocols. If you're interested, I would encourage you to go to the website of the Young Israel of Woodmere, New York. They have a fantastic protocol that's available for free. You can download it and look at it. And that's just an example of a protocol that's in place that where the rules become clear. And it's also a statement by that institution, a summer camp, a synagogue, a school, that we take this seriously. Are abuse cases reported to the police, or are they dealt with internally? Are victims supported, or are victims shunned? Are abusers supported, or are abusers shunned? And finally, do victims get professional help from a credentialed, licensed mental health professional who is specializes in child abuse treatment. I'm going to go through why these are risk factors, and then I encourage you, just design a point system on your own and do an evaluation for how your community stacks up. And I don't have hard data on it, but I've spoken to hundreds of mental health professionals over the years, and my own anecdotal evidence of dealing with so many communities and situations. And there's a clear pattern. There's no question in my mind that there's a vast difference in the rates of abuse in your communities. So again, are the child safety classes for kids, for parents, for staff in an institution? Of course, this is important because the children, the research shows that one conversation with a child makes them 5 to 6 times more likely to defend themselves. Child safety education is extremely effective and it's extremely helpful. So a community that has education going on will be more protected. And again, when an abuser looks at a community, they're not going to be comfortable moving into a community or making a move, God forbid, in a community that has child safety education. Are children comfortable talking about their bodies? Can they identify their body parts? That's, the research shows clearly that children that are comfortable talking about their bodies and having these conversations are less likely to be abused and more likely to talk about it if they are. Protocols, same thing as I said before, these things send messages. And help communities deal with very complex issues of boundaries and the like. And as we know, this is all changing. We didn't have many of these rules in place, and they were different when we foolishly or naively thought that we were safe because we're a religious community. Are abuse cases reported to the police? Folks, if abuse cases are not reported to the police, you're going to have a staggering increase of abuse. The research shows that the average abuser in the general population, where they have less access to kids than they do in our close-knit communities, where there's shul and the like, the average predator abuses between 50 and 200 children in their lifetime. So if they're not reported to the police, if they're not off the streets, they're going to continue to abuse until they're stopped, until they're arrested. And this stuff of watching them or having a VAD does not work. So that's a real question. Are they reported to the police or not? Are victims supported? A victim in a community where a victim is supported, where the rabbi gets up and says, come forward, please, we want to help you, they're much more likely to come forward. If there's a message that the victims are shunned, they're less likely to come forward. And again, the abusers continue, and the victims, God forbid, wallow in their terrible pain. And this cycle, God forbid, continues. Are abusers supported or shunned? We spoke about that earlier. And do victims get professional help? The encouraging message is that therapy does help, again, by a licensed, credentialed professional, not guys like me who are very well-intentioned and want to help. I'm not capable of giving counseling, of helping an abuse victim. So just for argument's sake, take these 7 questions and assign them a value from 0 to 10. Okay, if you have child safety classes in your community, you have good child safety classes, give yourself a 0. Are children comfortable talking about their bodies? A 0. If they're not, give yourself a 10 or a 5 if it's something in between. Are abusers reported to the police? If not, 10. Add them up, folks. If you have 0 to 20 or so, you're in good shape. You just need to do some work. If it's 20 to 40 or so, there's some real work that needs to be done. If it's 40 to 70, God forbid, if your community rates 60 to 70, if the answers to these questions are not the type that lower abuse, I propose to you, may God forgive me, I feel a responsibility to be honest and forthright, because this is pikuach nefesh. Lives depend on decisions that community leaders make, and they are responsible morally for not doing the right thing, for not protecting their children. I wrote yesterday, let the chips fall where they may. This is too important for me to be politically correct. So make this assessment. If your value when adding these things up are 40, 50, 60, 70, and the answers are wrong, I'm telling you, again, I have no data, but my sense is that the abuse rates are staggering, worse than you could ever imagine. So I want to empower you to help your communities do the right things, make these evaluations. And again, this is a dialogue. I encourage you to be part of it. thebrightbeginnings.com. I'm setting aside time to really try to answer questions there and to engage in a dialogue. These discussions will help our children, will help our families. Please join and do the right thing and do what you can to keep your children and your community's children safe. Thank you very much.